Wait for it. No. Wait for it. I'm gonna do the intro again. I think now I'm live. Now it's live. Now we should be live. Okay, I'll do an intro again. Hello, folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays in this fine morning in old Romania, old continent, on the old continent. It's 8 o'clock here. This morning I'm playing with questions again. I'm doing an interview with the head developer of now defunct TMG, Tasty Minister Games. One of the companies which I really liked for the games they put out, and also a game designer. He designed, I think, one of his most known game is Eminent Domain, also Crusaders. So, without further ado, welcome to Booghy Plays, Mr. Seth Jaffee.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I think now you can see everything. I think now we're fine.
I Yes,
Okay.
it does appear to be. Yes, there we go.
Uh, Now, welcome to my virtual gaming room and my virtual comfy chairs. I hope you are feeling all right this fine evening in where are you, in Arizona?
I am in Arizona, Tucson,
Tucson,
Arizona.
Arizona. Um,
To the old West, back where where you see Western movies. A lot of them were filmed out here, actually.
um, how is it there? Is it hot now?
Generally speaking, yes, summer is pretty hot. The other day it was like 107 degrees. However, this is also kind of monsoon season, so every afternoon there's a bunch of, well, like today was very overcast. It didn't actually rain where I am, but it rained up different part of town. And it was actually very nice. I went to a park with my toddler. My sister's in town. We visited her, and it was overcast and not that hot out. So and it didn't rain, so it was actually really nice. But yeah, it gets really hot, and then it rains a little bit in the afternoon. Uh,
Oh,
but
well, that means it's not. It's bearable here in Romania. It's so hot. It's so hot. It's over 30 degrees Celsius, 31, 32, 30. It ended. I think yesterday my car showed me 38 degrees Celsius. I don't know if you realize. I think it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. 104. I don't know. 107, something like this Fahrenheit.
yeah, well, 38 Celsius is about 100,
Yeah,
100.4, I think, Fahrenheit. So 100, so it was 107 degrees here the other day. So
even
that's like,
hotter.
oops,
Even hotter.
yeah, 41 or something
Oh, whoa,
Celsius.
that's crazy.
Uh,
Uh,
it gets as hot as 45 Celsius probably is probably the hottest I've seen it here. But
well,
um, yeah, whatever. It's very hot in the summer, and it's the good news is that in the winter I walk around in shorts and a t-shirt because it's not that cold.
well, um, well. First, welcome here. Thank you for accepting my invitation to do this interview. The interview will have two parts. The first part is more of your journey, and at the end, I'm going to have a questionnaire, a fast questionnaire. Uh,
Sure.
so let me go to my questions first. Where's my questions? Where are my questions? Okay, I I should be prepared. So, um, my first part of the interview is we talk a bit about your upbringing. So, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Oh, that's farther back than I expected. I was born in Toledo, Ohio, which is kind of in the middle, top of the country in the middle, I guess.
You know who? Sorry, I
And
need
I
to stop you a bit. Um, it was that character from MASH who was from Toledo, Ohio. Whenever I hit Toledo,
Oh, Perhaps I
You
never
never
watched
watched
MASH
MASH?
really. Yeah, I might be a little too young for that, but also I just didn't care about that show. I watched a lot of TV when I was a kid, but
Oh,
not
really?
that.
Sorry.
Um, yeah, it's possible they were from Toledo. Anyway, I was only from Toledo until I moved out here when I was
Ah,
six and
okay.
a half.
Oh, in Tucson.
So I only vaguely remember Toledo anyway. But yeah, I've been out here for 40 some odd, a little more than 40 years. Um, and I grew up here in Tucson, and I mean, I did some stuff when I was a kid. Uh I liked to keep playing games when I was a kid, and I had a bunch of like unusual ones, not just Monopoly, and I had Monopoly and stuff, but I had also like I had like Electronic Stratego. I had something called Electronic Detective, which was like a game that you had a little like a mystery, and the computer knew the answer, and it was like a one player thing, and you tried to like solve the mystery. I had Spy versus Spy, which is a fun tile laying game. Well, it was fun when I was a kid, where you make I loved Spy versus Spy. I loved Mad Magazine and stuff when I was a kid, and so there was this game, and it was kind of based on the Spy versus Spy little comics, and you had the black spy and the white spy and then the gray spy, and you would place tiles to make tunnels to go get bombs and take them back to your base, and then you look at the bottom and see if it either blew up in your face or gave you a benefit, which is ridiculous if you if you think about it. But it was fun when I was a kid, and it was Mad
Yeah.
Magazine themed. And so I had like these weird kind of board games, and really no one to play them with. My sister occasionally maybe, but
So you had any? I
um,
wanted to ask you if you had any siblings, and did you play together a lot?
I do have one sibling, and my sister is a couple years younger than me, and I played with her with stuff, but not a whole lot of games. We did play. My family played Rummy Q or Rummy-O. I never knew it was Rummy-O or Rummy Q. I think I thought it was Rummy Q forever, and then I looked at the box once when I was adult, and it said Rummy-O TM, and I thought maybe I misremembered that as Rummy Q. Anyway, a rummy game with tiles. We played that as a family. We played Monopoly, I guess, some number of times. We didn't play a whole lot of other stuff. And I do remember in high school, my sister for Hanukkah, she offered to get me a gift, and she said I could get you this game called Set or this game called Magic the Gathering. Uh, which one do you want? And I said, well, will you play Magic with me? And she said, no. And I said, will you play Set with me? And she said, yes. So I asked for Set. And it even cost a couple dollars more. And she got me that. And then 2 years later, I started playing Magic, and I was like, wow, I really wish I'd had those cards that came out in 1993. They would have been worth a fortune now.
um,
But yeah, so that was
so so
I,
practically, this is, let's say, you kind of answered the one question I had. um, Gaming was a part of your child. You learned to play since you were a little child. Childhood's probably your kid of the 70s, 80s.
yeah, I was born in 75. I don't remember the 70s very
Yes,
well, so
80s.
mostly
Yeah,
the
yeah.
80s, I guess.
So practically, then the small computer games started to appear. No, the in the 80s.
Uh, Yes, we had it. Everyone had a
Atari. Yeah.
Atari, but we had Intellivision because we had to be different, I guess. We had an Intellivision, which was awesome. I actually liked it a lot. And I remember, I guess it didn't do really well. We used to go to the toy store at KB Toys in the mall, and they'd have a bin, a giant like basket of all the Intellivision games that cost $1 because I don't know, they were on sale maybe. And so my sister and I would go there and we'd pick out a couple of new games for $1 each, and we played them. Some of them were good. I really liked. I mean, Tron Deli Discs. That was fun. And side note, I love playing Ultimate Frisbee now. So that was maybe predictive. Uh, in Tron, they had those what do they call them? The identity discs, and you throw them and stuff. So in this game, you would throw the identity disc and kind of shatter the bad guys that would come after you and just try to live a long time. And you could use them to block the other oncoming discs. But it was like throwing a frisbee, and now I play frisbee, so that's amusing. Whatever. We had a variety of games with very very poor graphics because back
Well.
then, in television and Atari were,
Yeah.
pixels.
Yeah.
Um, I also had. My father was kind of an early adopter on Macintosh, so we had Mac
Oh.
computers all the
Oh.
time. We had a couple of games on there, and I played around a little bit with some early version of some early internet stuff. Like I think I played a tiny bit of a forum based D&D type, role playing, for like a week probably. We had some games. I had this puzzle game that was cool that I liked called The Fool's Errand. I had We had this business simulation game where you were crash landed on a planet and the planet was full of like simian like ape, I don't know, people, and you would pay. So the resource was like bananas, and you would like pay bananas for paint. You had to like paint this protective stuff on your spaceship, and once you finished painting your spaceship, you could blast off again. But it was like a business simulation. It was all supply and demand, and it was fun. My sister and I played it all the time. I don't know. It was Run for the Money, I think it was called. It was a weird thing. Anyway, we played that. I played a weird tur multiplayer game called Robo Sport, but you had to like take turns sitting at the computer to do it because it wasn't online or something. So you would have these robots and you kind of control them, and it would only show you what your robots could see. So you'd plan out your turn and program your robots, and then the next guy would come in and sit down. It would only show what their robots see, whatever. And then you would, after it was all done, you'd sit down for your next turn, and it would show you the action, what happened, in the last block of time, and then now it's the next turn. And you could set your robots up like shoot anyone that walked its view, or you could like go to a certain spot, whatever. You were like, I don't know, playing capture the flag or something. But that was kind of a neat game that I had too. Like I had all these games that I've never heard of since then, and everyone else is talking about. Oh, I had they played Fireball Island or Dark Tower, and I'm like, I don't know what those are. I've never heard those. And there's like the popular games that everyone's heard of and knows from their childhood. And I'm like, I was exactly that age.
but
Never heard of Fireball Island.
never played it. Yeah, and what what did you end up playing? Did you play sports? Did you play, or you stayed more at home and played games, board games?
When I was a kid, I didn't really do much in the way of sports. I played if I played anything, I played. I got Nintendo when it came out, or approximately, maybe a little after it came out. I played a bunch of Nintendo. I had one game, and I made friends with somebody in sixth grade who had like 30 games, and I had the one game he didn't have. So I would trade my Contra for three of his games for a week, and then that was the entire basis of our friendship, really. And then we became good friends. And in fact, that was Michael Mendez's older
Uh-huh.
brother. So it's because of
Okay.
that. It's because of
Uh,
that Nintendo
for
trading that I
for people who don't know who Michael Mendez is the guy who started Tasty Minster Games. Yeah.
right,
Okay.
yes,
Sorry
and
for interrupting you.
yeah. So yeah, Michael's actually 7 years younger than his brother and I, and so I forged that friendship based largely on this Nintendo trade, um, and got to be friends with the guy, and Michael was a 5 year old at the time, but later, well, when he grew up a bit, it turned out I had more in common with Michael, and I'm more closer friends with Michael now than I am with his brother anymore. But yeah, and then Michael went on to start Taste Neutral Games and
Yeah.
facilitated me becoming a game industry person. Um, so yeah, that was all because of Contra on Nintendo. But anyway, so you asked. So when I was a kid, yeah, I played in Nintendo. I would go to, as a teenager, I'd go to like the arcade and play Street Fighter, or various other arcade games. When I was in high school, I started playing basketball. Not like professionally or whatever. Pick up basketball, and I enjoyed that. I played a lot of basketball, and but I really liked better was volleyball, which I only played in like, well, at that point I only played in PE class or whatever. But later in college, I started playing volleyball more, and then sometime in college, I started playing ultimate frisbee, and that just eclipsed every other sport for me. I just played ultimate all the time. It's super fun. I like it a lot, and I mean I miss volleyball and stuff, but at this point in the last 20 years, I've only ever played ultimate. Um,
Oh.
but for a while, I was playing it 7 days a week or whatever. I was between college team practice and pickup games and whatever. I played for a while. I was playing Ultimate 7 days a week.
So
Like
y-
right.
so you probably I don't know that much about professional volleyball in the US, but I know a thing or two about professional basketball. So you must be an NBA fan if you played basketball. Still watch games?
Actually, not
No?
really. Not really. I never I like to play the games. I don't like to like watch people play. It's not fun for me. I can tolerate watching, well, a little bit of like basketball or volleyball or ultimate because I know what's going on. And if somebody does something impressive, I can be like, oh wow, I actually appreciate what that was. But like I can't watch baseball or something. Not number one, baseball is super boring. But also like if somebody did something good or bad, I
No.
wouldn't really recognize it,
Basketball is a bit more
Or
fun
football.
than baseball.
Certainly, yeah, it is more fun. But even then, like watching somebody play something fun is not nearly as fun
Great.
as playing something fun. I don't like watching people play board games either, but I love playing them.
Well, yeah.
Um,
No, I don't like watch.
it's a little bit different in board games, all the action is going on in someone's
Yeah,
head. You can't really
yeah,
see that,
exactly.
uh, uh, yeah, so I'm not really a fan. I'm not a sports fan. I just like to play
And
Ultimate, really.
what did you? When did you go to college? What profession? Or did you go to college? Or what the profession did you do you have these days?
I did go to college. I went to the University of Arizona, which is right by where I live,
Which is rather a big
or where I
university,
lived.
as far as I know.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Big state school. Went there, got a degree in civil engineering. I'm not a civil engineer, though. I'm a structural engineer, and it's weird because that's like I always thought it was weird that civil engineers and structural engineers are completely different. We do different stuff. We don't do any like there's like zero overlap. But civil engineering is like the bigger category that structural engineering is like part of. So my degree is in civil engineering, my license is in civil engineering, but I don't do any civil engineering. And I used to say that the structural engineers were like the snobby engineers that wouldn't sit with the other civil engineers at lunch. It's not. It's just completely different. But yeah, so I'm a structural engineer. I've been a structural engineer for 20 years or something like that.
So this is your main job, basically.
And that is my actual job. Um, I've only worked at like two different engineering places. Well, three technically, although one of them was the company laid me off, and then my boss started his own company and hired me back. So I guess I don't know if this counts as the same. But yeah, there was a time though when TMG was getting bigger that I cut down my hours at my engineering job, and I went to part-time engineering, and so I could do more with TMG. And in fact, at least one time, I walked in to quit, and I told my boss I was going to quit because this other thing was doing well, and he kind of didn't want. He was like, kind of talked me out of it. He wanted me to. He's like, what if you just work 2 days a week? You know, make this your weekends or whatever. And um, I ended up doing that, and so I it was kind of good because I kind of held on to that. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
job which with a paycheck basically which was nice, and also it worked out really well when TMG sort of evaporated. I had something to go back to. I just went back to full-time engineering, and my boss was happy to have me back for full-time, and I was happy to get paid money so I could
Well,
buy
food.
food and diapers
Yeah.
and whatnot. um so yeah, I never did stop being an engineer, although I did cut back hours for a while there. That was actually a pretty comfortable time. Like I had the job, but I didn't have to do it all the time. I was able to spend time on game stuff, TMG stuff, and that was right before I got married. So I actually had like a really like comfortable, uh, flexible like schedule time. Everything. It was just like I could do whatever I wanted basically, and I was able to concentrate on. I didn't have as many things like vying for my attention and things like that. So that was a really interesting sort of time. Um, and then then I got married, and then we had a kid, and then the pandemic happened, and TMG shut down. After that series, at this point, I work full-time engineering from home, and I've got a 4-year-old who likes to have attention. So,
Well, it's normal. It's a child. He needs attention.
mhm.
Uh,
Well, I'm hopeful
he'll
that
grow up.
before long he'll want to start playing games with me. Is what I'm hoping
Yep.
for.
He will. He will. Give him time. Give him time. He will. So, when did you discover modern board games?
I don't remember the year exactly, but it was.
Sorry.
I had some friends, from friends from high school. I'm still friends with them now, actually, but they would have me over. They would have like a they would have a board game that was like Settlers of Catan or Puerto Rico or something. So I went over to the house. I specifically remember going this one time, and they were teaching. There was like this new game they just got, so it might have been 2002, 2003, maybe. Um, it was Puerto Rico. And they're like, we're gonna play this game. It's Puerto Rico, and I was like, okay. I didn't know what that was, obviously. So they taught the game, and everyone was like nodding, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. They explained the rules, and we started playing. And everyone's like, okay, I know what's going on. And I felt so lost. I had no clue what was going on. I felt embarrassed to say anything about it. I just felt the most dumb I've ever felt in my life. And there was this extra social pressure too because these guys were very smart, like a very smart group of people, and I was like a year older than them. So I was in some of their same classes in high school and stuff, and
Expected you to play
um,
good.
I didn't want them to think I was an idiot
Yeah.
or something, you know. I wanted them to think I fit in with them, you know. And but I was so befuddled by this game. I had no, I just, it was a really bad experience for me because I couldn't get it. I didn't get it, and it felt worse that I looked around and everyone else was like nodding, like, okay, I'm understanding this, and I had just never played any of those games before, that kind of thing, and I had played some games, like different games, but nothing like that, I guess, and I just didn't get it, and that was rough. Uh, Fortunately, I didn't.
You,
I did revisit that later. You know,
you did not quit.
um, and Puerto Rico is one of my favorite games. I get it now, right? I figured it out. But in between, there was another game that one of those guys taught me called Settlers of Catan. Now it's just called Catan, and I liked it. And I that one did not befuddle me. I liked it. I liked it so much that I wanted to play it with my other friends, and I wanted to buy a copy. And I called every store in town, and nobody had it. It just so happened that a friend of mine was up in Phoenix, um, and visiting some friend of ours that owns a store up in Phoenix or something, or worked at a store up in Phoenix. And so I called him and I said, "Hey, do they have Catan at this, store?" And he was there at the time. He's like, "Yeah, they do. Great, buy it, bring it back, I'll pay you back." He did that. He brought it, and then that weekend, I brought it over to. I had these like four. Is it college? I had four friends that lived in an apartment together, and several other friends would come over all the time. We'd play Magic or we'd watch BattleBots or something. And so I brought that. I brought Settlers over there on a Friday night, and we started playing Settlers. A bunch of us were there. Four at a time, and then as soon as the game was over, winner would stay. Three new people would sit down. We'd play again, and again, nonstop until Sunday morning. We took a break for breakfast. Like some people went home, some people came back later, some people went to sleep. Some people I did not leave or go to sleep actually. We just played Settlers for 30 something hours straight. And that was awesome. That was me. That was probably me getting back, into the hobby game, whatever, hobby. So that was super fun. I really liked it. And like I said, like some of those guys lived there. They like would go fall asleep, wake up 6 hours later or whatever, and we're all still there playing. And yeah, it was a good time. Um, One of my friends missed that. They were, I don't know, they had left town or something before that happened and was bummed about it. So one year I decided, I was talking to him about it and he was sad he had missed out on this fun sounding thing. And I said, well, it was getting to be close to Christmas time and that's when all my friends would come back. The ones that had left town because they graduated college and that's what you do. They would, for a few years you come back and you visit your family or whatever so my friends would come back home for Christmas or that for a week or two in December, and I would have them over. As much as I'd play games, and so I started to have this so that my friend could experience this 36-hour game fest. I just decided to have like a all weekend Christmas party. I invited people over to play for 36 hours straight if you wanted to, and then some came. And I actually kept stats. I sort of kept track of like how many hours people were there, what games they played, which who won them, and I had this whole thing like on a spreadsheet I still have, and I had prizes or whatever. It's like the most hardcore, which means most hours spent got a prize. I had a little like poker tournament where without money, like you just play with like fake money, and then winner gets I bought a copy of the Rounders DVD. I was like, here you go, you. And my friend, a guy won it who like he just all in every turn because it wasn't his money and he just randomly won. So I'm like, oh, that was a boring tournament. This is why you can't play poker without real money. It's
Yeah,
not fun.
it isn't.
Um,
There's the stakes
and
in the money. Is the stakes?
yeah, yeah. He's like, oh, it's not my money. It's not real money. Okay, all in. And he just kept doing that, and then he won. So,
Yeah.
um,
Um,
but anyway, so I have like I actually still have I think it's on the spreadsheet where it's um all the people that were there, like what games they played, what games they won. Um, I think I was there the entire time, and one of my friends was there almost the entire time. But a lot of people came and went. They for a couple hours, or maybe they came back the next day. So I didn't count myself for most hardcore or whatever, most hours spent. But because I would just give myself the prize. That would be fair. But yeah, it was fun. It was great, and I did it again the next year, but not it wasn't as fun. But I did it for 2 or 3 years. I did and then my friends stopped coming back home because that's what you do after you graduate college. You come back home for a couple of years and then you stop. Um, but yeah, that was fun, and it was kind of sparked by the fact that we had that long Settlers marathon, and my friend missed it, and I wanted to
And
I don't know have that thing
and
again.
that was probably mid 2000s, the way you say.
Oh, that was yeah, that must have been 2000. I don't know, five
Yeah.
or something. Who
Uh,
knows? Actually, I could tell you if I looked it up, but I'm not going to.
Now, well, today, what kind of a player are you? We all go through phases, but today, what kind of a player are you?
Um, well, today, so for the last several years, I'm going to say almost the last 4 years since my kid was born, I've played most of my gaming has been online on Board Game Arena or maybe other portals, which is something I didn't used to like. I used to prefer playing in person. Um, it's just more
Yeah,
fun,
it
I
is.
guess. It's
Yeah,
more social, I guess,
it
right?
is.
And it's still true that that's more fun. However, failing having the opportunity to play, especially since the pandemic, Board Game Arena and other sites like that have been a lifesaver. I because I constantly am. I only play turn based because I never know when I'm going to have to get up and do something else, so I can't commit to sitting down for a couple hours to play like a big game. Um, but if you're playing turn-based and everyone's online or whatever, it goes pretty quickly, and you might as well play. Yeah, it's the same thing as real time. Uh, but this way we can get up and we can stop the game and play tomorrow if we need to. So I mostly play uh, a ton of different games on Board Game Arena. I've gotten a couple of my friends. I used to try to play on different portals too because there's different games on like Yucata or MobiWeb or um, other sites like that. But I've got this couple of friends that play with me, and I've kind of talked them into doing that, and I didn't want to make them chase me around the internet to play in different websites. So now we just mostly play on Board Game Arena because it's got like a nice
Yeah.
interface, and it's got a lot of
And
games.
but what kind of
So
games do you prefer?
I prefer I guess I prefer like the middleweight strategy game, the Euro strategy style games. That's probably my preference. Although lately I've been trying a lot of two-player stuff. I just discovered Rift Force, which is a newish game that's really cool. I like it, but that's kind of a two-player dueling sort of game, yeah, one-on-one. I also just discovered a game called Dragon Bridge, another two-player duel game, which is I've met the designer of that one, Keith Burgun. I guess I've technically sort of met him before, at least online. But I recently joined his Discord server. I've read a book or two of his that he wrote on game design. I don't know, it's hit and miss. Some of the stuff he says is seems like nonsense, but some of the stuff sounds really smart. So whatever, he's a nice guy. And his game is actually I've heard him talk about it, but I never had a chance to try it. But they just put it on Board Game Arena, and so now I finally had a chance to try it. It's actually quite good. I'm enjoying Dragon Bridge. But we my favorite games though are like Puerto Rico, Railways of the World. Um, in fact, I think I call it Railroad Tycoon
Yeah,
because
that's the
that was the
first
version
version. Yeah.
that I started on. That might be my favorite game of all time. I never think it is, but then anytime I think about it, I'm like, yeah, this is probably my favorite game. Um,
It's in my top
it's
50.
it's so good.
It's in my top 50 games of all time.
Um,
Yeah, it's a good game. It is.
yeah. Another couple that I've really enjoyed that I found recently on Board Game Arena are Living Forest, which I didn't know. It's nominated for the Kennerspiel, but I'd never heard of it until I happened upon it on Board Game Arena, and that's a pretty good game. Um, and another one that I never heard of either. That's the thing about this Board Game Arena. You can like happen upon random weird games that you'd never heard of,
It,
look weird.
it,
You're like, well, I guess
yeah.
I'll try it, and it turns out to be cool. Glow is another one that it's like very stark
Yeah,
black and
yeah, yeah,
white packaging.
yeah, yeah. That's an
It's
interesting
cool though.
title.
I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So you are a gamer. We can trace this. We can say this. You are a gamer since you were a child. When did you start? So, when did you start transitioning, going from a gamer into a designer slash let's say developer slash designer, because you were more a developer than you were a designer during the time at TMG. And when did you start TMG? When did you start working as a developer for TMG?
Good question. So, what I didn't say in the answer to the last question, but probably should have, was that I like I've always been sort of a competitive player, and my friends were all very good at the games that we played. Probably some of we always kind of thought it'd be fun to have like a play in some sort of board game tournament, but we didn't. We even thought of like how formats that might work, but we never did. I did play in a board game tournament at Essen one time. I joined the Panda folks, and that was fun. So I always liked competitive. Games, you know, not to pat my own back or whatever, but I'm not bad at games. I usually, I mean, I'm often I do a good I finish well, or I win, or I close to win, or something. And my friends are all very good as well. Like that just was our sort of our circle was, you know, and we played a lot of Magic. My friends are Magic players, and so we were competitive players to begin with. So how did I get to board game design? Is I played Magic. I played Magic for a decade, and with my friends we'd go to tournaments and things. And my favorite part of Magic, they were a bit better than me. They certainly did better than me at tournaments, at Magic tournaments. But my favorite part was making decks. Like I would never do well if I took a net deck, that is, say a list of cards that somebody won a tournament with. If I just took some other deck and just played it, I would do poorly. I wouldn't do well. Um, but I did pretty well if I took my own deck that I made that was just like unique and whatever constructed, and I feel like I knew why the cards were there. I had a better idea of how to play the deck, and so I would do better. And you know, I never did as well. I played very sloppily and made a lot of mistakes, and it cost me, you know, quite a few like tournaments or whatever. So I never got like played on the pro tour or anything like that. But I did go to a lot of tournaments with like unique decks that
Dex. Uh-huh. Okay.
did really well at tournaments. Or you know, people you didn't know what to do about them. They people prepare at the tournaments. You bring your deck that you know. There's a certain number of decks that people like know about, and there's some weird ones that people make, but for the most part, you're like, oh, I'm playing against this particular deck or that particular deck, and they kind of know what to expect. And then they play against my deck, and it's like they didn't necessarily know. That gave me a little bit of a edge sometimes,
Edge.
perhaps,
Mhm.
or whatever. That
And you enjoyed
I
doing
liked
this.
making the
You
decks.
enjoyed creating, yeah,
Yeah,
the probably
and
synergies between the cards.
exactly. So the thing about making a deck in Magic is that you uh, put cards together that you think will perform well and play, and then you play, right? And you see how it does. So it's very analogous to board game design. So when my friends all you know, graduated college and moved away, Magic got less fun for me because I mean I still played for a while, but like I'd go to the shop and local tournaments, and I'd be playing against some kids I don't really know or whatever. And like it wasn't as fun. It wasn't as fun. My friends weren't there, so I kind of drifted away from Magic. But I had this like hole to fill, this creative hole where I used to be, you know, filling that with building Magic decks, and I didn't have anything to do about it. So I happened upon, and just about then I just graduated college, and I was um, got a job, you know, a career type job. So things were changing in my life anyway. And I happened upon this website called Board Game Designers Forum, so bgdf.com, which still exists. And it was a relatively new site at the time for amateur board game designers, basically to talk about board game design and stuff. And I was like, huh, it sounded neat. And I would go to that site and I would read posts and I would participate in posts and I would talk to people. And they had back then there was a thing called IRC, which is like Discord without the emojis. Um, and so they had a chat room on IRC, and I would just have that on all the time, and I would frequently go in there and talk to just whoever was in there. I made a few friends on that website, some of which are um, big game industry people now, like Gavin Brown from Roxley Games. I met him on there. Josh Capel, a big artist and a publisher now too.
Mhm.
I met him on there back, you know, 12 years ago, whatever. And Ariel Seoane is a good friend of mine. He lives in Uruguay, and he actually came to my wedding here in the States. I met him on there as well, and he does game art as well. So yeah, and there's other people as well, like a number of people that we were all like amateur back then have been published since then. And so yeah, I kind of fell in love with this website, and it occurred to me that making a game was a lot like making a deck in Magic. Instead of putting cards together and see how they work when you shuffle them and play, you put rules and mechanisms together, and you see how they perform when you sit down and play the game. And it's very analogous, very similar. I filled that hole in my whatever my creative hole that I had, and it was great. And so I've never looked back. That was in 2002 or 2003, I guess. 2002, I guess, is when I started at the website.
I
Um,
see. And
yeah.
when did you
So you
start?
had some more parts to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
When did you meet with the guys? When did you start TMG? Were you part of from? You are a part of the team from the beginning, or you were added during the way the head of
So
development?
well, once I started getting into game design, um, the 2003. So this is probably where I became a developer. Like the moment I became a developer was probably this. In 2003, somebody from that website, Board Game Designers Forum, had a game about the Three Musketeers that I thought sounded awesome, cool, and he's from somebody from England or. He sent me, and he was nice enough. His name is David. He was nice enough to send me a copy of his prototype. He made he sent it to me internationally, and it was like little cylinders for pawns and little scraps of paper for tokens, and I was like, oh, it was awfully nice of him to send me this, but I wanted my friends to play it. I didn't think I'd be able to get them to play with like little scraps of paper, so I actually made like a nicer version, like a nice prototype of it, nicer like prototype wise, not like
What game are you talking about?
printed.
Because I didn't hear.
It's a game called it's never been published. It's called All for One, and it's about the Three Musketeers.
Uh huh.
And so it's this guy David's game, and I got my friends to play
Uh huh.
it,
Oh, okay, okay.
and they said it was miserable. It was like work, but they weren't getting paid, and they hated it. But the thing was, I had all these ideas to like make it better, but I was like, it's not my game. I can't just change it. So I played it with his rules, and my friends didn't like it. Then 2 weeks later, I got the same friends together, and I said, okay, look, I made a bunch of changes. Let's try it again. And they hesitantly or reluctantly said, okay, we'll do it. And they played it again, and they said, okay, well, that wasn't as bad, but it still was kind of bad. So I was like, well, but I could see all this potential. And I was like, oh, but I think it could be good. And so I just kept working on it and kept working on it. And I kept playing with my friends. And eventually it got to the point where I thought it was actually not bad. And it got to be kind of good. And I really liked it. And uh, you know, most of the people I played it with liked it too, and that was great. And then the interesting part was having to try to convince David about all my changes that they were good. That you should make all these changes to your game because I tried it and it was good. And it's kind of funny. At each change, almost every change, he initially was like, "Yeah, I don't know, I don't think so," and then he eventually was like, "Oh, okay, you're right." Like 100% of the changes were like ended up being he agreed with me. And then we worked on it together for like a year or something, and we ended up splitting off into like two different versions of the game, whatever. We eventually kind of reconciled them. I actually went to England for something um, one year, and I actually met him and some of his playtest group, and we actually played it together for the first time since we'd only been
Yeah,
corresponding from email.
yeah.
We have our separate groups and whatever. But yeah, this game uh, went on and on and on, and for years, and I thought, it got to the point it's as good as some games on the shelf. I thought it should be published and whatever, but I didn't know how to do that. I actually tried to get it published a little bit, but I didn't really know how to do that. So it never got anywhere. And to this day, it's never been published. And that's like maybe my biggest regret of my game design career.
Yeah,
That
is
might be
the
usurped now. Stuff happened, but was that game never got published. And recently, I'll say recently, it's been about 2 years now, but right before the pandemic, I actually got that game out and revamped it and updated it and made it better. And again, I think it's publishable. I think it's on par with stuff you see on the shelf. But yeah, as yet is not. So I think that moment, that game, when
that
that
was
story
yeah, that was
is, I think, me becoming a developer.
the fire.
That's how I do development. Is I take a game of somebody else's, I decide what I think ought to be different, and I try that, and I convince myself it's right. If I can think it's right, then I try to convince the designer that to try it.
When you're designing, can you be your own developer?
Yeah, I mean technically yes. I always have said that every designer could use a developer, myself included. Unfortunately, I've never had the benefit of another on my games thus far. I've not really had the benefit of having an outside developer. But I think I've done all right. Like Eminence Domain, I'm pretty proud of. I'm sure there are some things that would be could be different or better if somebody had been there to help develop it outside eyes. Similarly, Crusaders, I'm pretty happy with that how that came out. And again, that was just all me. There wasn't a developer there. I found that if you kind of let a design sit for a while and come back to it later, you could kind of pretend it's someone else's game that you're now looking at like a developer. Like I've kind of tricked myself that way to kind of develop my own games as if I were somebody they were somebody else's.
Do you
But I
how important you find a developer in getting a game out there?
I think it's very important. Well, let me qualify that. I think it's very important to make a good game. I think without a developer, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult for one person to both invent, create, design, and then also develop their own game to the point where it's like super good. It's not impossible. There are people that are good at it. Like I said, I'm happy enough with Eminence Domain and Crusaders having not had a developer, but I think if you really want a really good game, I think the best, it's probably best served to have more than one person work on it, basically. That said, um, uh, if you're that's to try to make what I would consider like a good game. One thing that's weird to talk about when you're talking about game design is like the product people are trying to sell doesn't necessarily have to be a super good game, which is kind of disappointing. But um, there's more to a game than just the gameplay, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. You're selling when you're a publisher and you're selling a product, there's a lot more to it than just good gameplay. If you have good gameplay and and bad art and no advertising or whatever, it's not going anywhere. Like it's very seldom someone's gonna like notice that game and like it's gonna go viral or something. Whereas if you have a mediocre game with excellent art and a lot of advertising or something like that, it could do very
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And
yep,
that's just like the way it goes, or that's how
yep.
things go. Um, so and in that case, who needs a developer? You just slap some stuff together if as long as it works. And I don't know, it's a little cynical. Nowadays, a lot of people don't play a game more than a couple of times because there's so many out there. Um, or even if they do play it, they don't. There's a lot more people gaming nowadays, and not all of them are going deep on a game or getting really into it or even
Yeah,
necessarily being that competitive with it. So as long as it kind of holds up to a play or two with before anyone notices that there's a problem, then yeah, maybe
yeah,
that's good enough. Um, I prefer to play a game a lot of times and get good at it, so to speak. And so I can't bring myself to make a game that is all right for a couple plays, but then you notice it's terrible, like or it's got a problem. That's not my sort of
yeah,
style, I guess. And so I can't bring myself to make a game that's good on first impression, but actually not that good a game. Um, so to make a game that's actually a good game, that's where a developer helps. If you're just trying to make a game that gives a good first impression, maybe you don't need a developer. And if you're really good at it, or if you're very,
yeah,
hardworking at,
yeah,
or got a lot of experience, you could develop your own game. I mean, that's not impossible, and do a good
yeah.
job, right? So that's possible too.
So,
Um,
when did you start developing for TMG?
TMG started. So I at this point, as we talked about All for One and stuff, that was like 2003, and so uh, after that, I was kept working on games. My friend Michael Mendez liked to play games. We played games together, and at one point, I remember having a conversation with him about this is before TMG started. Uh, he liked the idea of Roads and Boats, but had never played it, and he liked the idea of like a Roads and Boats in space or something. And he was explaining this to me on the phone, and I was trying to figure out like what he was talking about because I'd never played Roads and Boats either. And I ended up making a game which is Terra Prime, which is my first game. That was sort of based on that conversation. So in a way, it was sort of based on Roads and but the two people talking about it had never played Roads and Boats, so and it's certainly not as big or complicated as Roads and Boats. But yeah, so I made this game and I had it, and Mike liked it, I liked it, and then also, I went to Seattle. I used to go to Seattle every year, and I happened upon this guy, um, uh, Alex Rockwell, who at the time used to write like strategy articles on Board Game Geek for like Puerto Rico and Calis, and he was kind of well known for like that kind of analysis and strategy articles. He had a game that he had made, and I played it, and I thought this is pretty cool, and I made a copy. I asked him if I could make a copy of it. I did, and I played it at home. And so I had these two games, and Mike liked them both, and he wanted to do something in the game industry, but he didn't feel like he was a designer, so he didn't want to design a game. But he was kind of a businessy kind of guy, and he decided he would try. He wanted to try to be an entrepreneur, and so he decided to start a publishing company. And he was thinking about doing that around 2006, 2007. I don't know. Right around then, though, so he had just gotten married, and his wife became pregnant, and they were going to have a kid. And he goes, "Okay, maybe I'm not going to quit my job and be an entrepreneur when I've got a brand new kid, right?" So he didn't do it. But then a few years later, I guess things were his situation was looking up, and he decided to go ahead and do it and start a publishing company. And this is 2009. And so this is a guy. Remember, I've known this guy since he was 5 years old. So I was around. I was, we're friends, and he was going to start this publishing company. And he's like, "Hey, you've got two games, Homesteaders, which was Alex's game, and Terra Prime, which was my game." He was like, "Why I could start by publishing those two games, and that'll be my, whatever, my game, my company." And so I was there from the outset in 2009. I went with him that year to Gamma trade show, and was trying to help him figure stuff out. I wasn't part of the company technically, but I was helping him every step of the way. I was trying to convince him to do things that were smart and not things that seemed bad in my opinion. I didn't really know anything, but I was if something sounded bad to me, I'd try to let him know that's a bad idea. For example, he wanted to kind of keep costs down. He was thinking two games, both are kind of Euro style games, are going to have cubes. Well, I'll just get a million cubes and then use them for both games. And I'm like, great, sure, do that. And then he was like, oh, I'll just have all the things. I'll find the cheapest manufacturing for all the different parts, have them all sent to my house, and I'll put them together in my garage. And I was like, I don't think you want to do that. I think that's a bad idea. And I talked him out of it because I think that would have,
Yeah,
I don't know
I would
that
have gone crazy.
he,
Who would have gone crazy to do that?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I'm happy. I think it was the right thing to talk him out of that. I was successful in talking him out of that. And also by the time we were publishing it, we found that our manufacturer Panda, for Homesteaders. Actually, wait a second. Panda was our later manufacturer. Whatever was the case, the pieces for Homesteaders were going to be cubes, but I guess it didn't cost that much more to have unique
Unique shapes,
shapes
yeah.
uh, for like cows and apples and whatever for the pieces. And so we ended up doing that. And this is 2009. This is right around the time Agricola had come out and people were jonesing for animeeples, those animal
Yeah.
like meeples.
Yeah,
We
2000
were like right
Agricola was out 2007, I believe.
2008,
Uh,
2008, I
yeah,
think. I thought maybe whatever. And
2007,
so
I think it was 2007 in Essen, and then in America probably 2008.
sure, in 2000,
Uh,
yeah.
and
Uh,
and
with the animeeples, it
anime,
came out for another year or two after
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, 2 years I think after or something like. The anime pearls were not from the beginning; they were cubes in the beginning.
Right. And so we were like right on the forefront of kind of making custom meeples,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
you could say. Um, which is right around then. Like since then, you don't have a game with just cubes anymore, right? Like things have
Well, you still are, you
shifted.
still have, but the mentality is you um, better have custom resources, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
nicer
I
to
mean,
have custom resources than plain cubes, which I agree with. It's a good man.
yep, and
It's a it brings theme and life into a thing
yeah, it's
which is, yeah,
the
cardboard.
same kind of idea that people get out of like the plastic miniatures, the sculpted plastic miniatures. Like, oh, they're so much cooler than not that. But like it kind of crosses it bridges the gap. It's like a classic painted wooden piece, like a classic Euro game has that classic feel or that elegant feel, but also is more fancy and unique and unique to what the piece is than just a cube. And I know people who are like, oh, just give me the cubes. I'm happy to have the cubes. But I think I can see how.
Yeah, it's far better.
having the custom
Yeah,
shapes
it's far
is
better.
just nicer. It's just better.
Now I do have
So that was
that was sorry, that was 2009.
sorry,
Yeah,
that was 2009. So that was when Michael started the company, and I was right with him the whole time. I wasn't like technically part of the company, but I was there, and he was publishing my game, and I was helping him every step of the way. I went with him to Gamma. While we were at Gamma, I met this Jay Cormier, which is
yeah, yeah.
a name you might
Mm-hmm.
recognize. And he had he actually he played the prototype of Homesteaders with us, and that was cool. And then he's like, "Oh, hey, I've got a prototype. You want to play my prototype?" And I was like, "Sure." At the time, I was like, "Great." And his game Belfort,
Belfort, yeah.
I really liked it, and I was like, "Hey, Mike, we could probably get this game because we're gonna need more games later." And so we actually ended up signing that game as well, right there, and I became friends with Jay. Later, I actually went like I forget exactly when, like a year later maybe. I when I was up in Seattle for one of my annual trips, he lives in Vancouver, which is just north of there, like 2 hours north. I actually rented a car and went and visited Jay overnight in his, and we, I got to see a bunch of his prototypes, and I actually brought home one of them, which we ended up publishing called Train of Thought. Um, so
I
that was
haven't
all these
played that one.
connections you make is interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
Train of Thought is a really awesome like party game.
Uh,
Um,
okay. And
so yeah, so I was right there from the beginning. But when did I, and like I said, he published my game, so I guess you could say I was a designer for TMG or whatever, or they published my game. When did I start doing development? Well, also kind of right then, because like Belfort, for example, I worked on a lot. So we signed it right there in 2009 at Gamma. Um, or maybe, and I worked on it. Maybe it was 2010. That might have been the second trip. Anyway, we signed it at Gamma, but and it came out in 2011, and I put a ton of work into it from developing it. Um, and I didn't. I wasn't on the payroll or something. I wasn't part of the company. I got royalties, just like they get royalties. I got like some percentage. Um, and so yeah, so right away I was quote unquote developing for TMG from the outset.
uh,
Um, and I also like every game, most of those for initial Big Gox games, Ground Floor was by a guy named
David
David
Short.
Short
Yep.
here in town. He lives here.
Yep.
Yeah, and I worked on that extensively. Kings of Air and Steam from Scott Olms, I worked on that extensively. Um, at the beginning, I was well, for one thing, I didn't really know any better, but for another thing, um, there wasn't like a budget or something. It wasn't like I was getting paid by the hour to work on these things. So I would just work on them until I thought they were good, and then I'd say, okay, yeah, it's great. Let's
Yeah.
here it is. Until we were happy with them, and yeah, and I would get compensated with by like royalties. And I was doing, it was just fun. It was just fun for me. It wasn't necessarily like, I had a job. It wasn't like I was, this is my livelihood. So I didn't. It probably was not the most efficient way, time efficient way. Since then, I don't do that. I don't take on a game that I'm like think has potential and spend 8 months working on it. Um, that's not really an efficient way to publish games. But at the time, I was basically just it's like a fun hobby, so I would just do that. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it worked. I think it was good. I think those games are good. I think part of the reason they're good is because I helped make them better than they were. They were good to be. They had something good about them to begin with. And I think I helped make them even better. And then I think they're good. Um, there were very few of the TMG Big Block games that I didn't do something to. Two of the ones I did very minimal development on were Gold West, which I tweaked some numbers on some of the
Uh-huh.
Boomtown tiles, the
I've seen.
scoring stuff. Um, and I made a promo for it, I guess. That's about it. And then Scoville, also did very little. I think the biggest thing I actually did with there was originally in Scoville the resources were limited, so you could kind of hoard them if you wanted to. It wasn't like a great move, like strategically, but you could, and if you did, it kind of caused what I considered problems. So I said, okay, well that's dumb. You shouldn't have all these problems happen just because somebody happened to hoard all the blue ones. So I changed that to not limited, and that was like the extent of my development on that one. And then I did some product development. The in Scoville they had like 8 different colors of resources or something, and so and there are colorblind issues and also they're all like a hierarchy. Some are worth more than others. So I actually had the idea to have like the basic one, the level 2 ones be the second, like bigger and bigger.
Bigger,
So in
bigger.
Scoville, they have these peppers, and some are taller than others. Um, and it's because the more rare ones are more tall, basically. And they're also different colors. So
Yeah.
because there's a lot of color mixing in that game. You like a red thing and a blue thing, and you put them together to make a purple thing. So you had all these like yeah,
Scoville is
you
one
know,
of the games which I do not haven't played. I know a bit about the game, but never played it.
yeah. Well,
So
it has yeah, like you combine two colors to make a third color like via the color wheel, and so you need like there were like 10 different colors of resources, and so in order to make them easier to differentiate for colorblind people, I made them
uh,
uh
the size, yeah,
taller than each other. Yeah,
taller,
so
the size was
that
the
was
differentiator. Yeah.
well in addition. Yeah,
Now, um, and you have been with TMG until they now TMG is not anymore, and in a way I'm sad. But let's go to and I don't want to talk about it more. Um, I think TMG was one of the best companies when it came to games which are mid-size Euros with great production value. Great. You published some of games which I really enjoy, like Yokohama or Gentes, and you've given them a new coat of paint, which make the experience a lot nicer for us gamers. So I just want to thank you for that. And let's, if sometime in the future TMG will come back, I hope they will come back with the same mentality of bringing to life. Oh, Luna! I will always forget about Luna, which no, I never forget about Luna. That's the idea. uh, it's one of my favorite. I think it's my favorite Stefan Feld, or one of my favorite Stefan Felds. Um, so if they'll ever come back, I hope they'll come back and do the same thing because they did it very very well, or you did it very very well. Now I have
yeah.
a question for you. What is fun to you? What do you define fun?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I don't know that it's something I can describe per se. I like competition, so I like like a fair competition and a I like um cre I like you mean like what games are fun or what in general
What
is
is
fun?
fun? What, yeah, what in games?
Something like a
In
challenge.
games,
I think
yeah,
a
in
challenge.
games, of
A
course.
challenge is fun. And in fact, I just wrote this article or whatever, a blog post about um, the difference between difficulty and challenge. And I think uh, I looked up somewhere the definition of challenge, and it said basically the definition that I found was that challenge is like a difficult task that's fun or rewarding to overcome the difficulty. And I thought that's pretty good. Like overcoming a challenge is fun.
Yeah,
And I think I mean I think it's fun in general for people, but for me, like I like that. I like figuring stuff out. I like feeling clever. Once you figure something out, feel clever that you figured it out. Um, I like opportunity for in games. I like opportunity for creative play. So I like when I'm playing a game and I'm like, oh, I want to do this thing. Oh, you blocked me a little bit. Okay, and but rather than just not being able to do it, if sometimes I can find a way to do something unusual or unconventional, but ends up being equivalent or better than what I was trying to do. Whatever, like that feels really good when you can figure out a way to oh I'm screwed because you took that thing. I can't do what I was gonna do. Oh wait a second, what if I do it like this and I can do this other thing that's related and I can end up doing and it ends up being like a way around the thing that didn't work out the way you wanted it to. I love it when that kind of thing can happen, and I like when games give that opportunity a lot. Um, that feels good to figure that out, to figure out a way
yeah.
to do that.
Let's.
I like
Oh, sorry.
efficiency.
Yeah,
I really like efficiency
yeah,
too. Just finding ways to do something. I mean, I'm an engineer. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
if I were to
Yeah.
describe engineering, it's find a more efficient way to do
Exactly, that's
stuff.
engineering. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned your blog. Your blog is where I, in a way, was when I first met you. Let's call it. When I first, I think the first time when I heard about you as a designer was when you published, which was 2018, I think, when you published Crusaders.
Crusaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I don't think I've played Eminent Domain before. That and then I don't know, from one thing led to the other, and then I ended up on your blog, which is Sedge Troll .blogspot.com,
.blogspot.com.
and there
Yes.
I learned a bit about game design. And if people want to learn a bit about game design, I think your blog is a nice tool to read about it, about your thoughts about game design, about the way you see game design, and different things about game design. I think I one of your no, the beginning of the one of your posts in the beginning was talking about how you price things. Or
Yeah, I've got a couple. So my blog is I use it for a couple of things. One is just basically notes to myself about games I'm playtesting or whatever, and for my own benefit. I mean, people can are welcome to read it, and I like when people comment on it. But sometimes I'm just posting about my latest thoughts or playtest session on a particular game, just so I can reference it later. Um, Another thing I use it for is, like you said, to kind of like spout my game design theories and philosophies. Um, Sometimes it's just thinking through a particular thing, and sometimes it's like I don't know, trying to teach a lesson, so to speak. Like the article you just mentioned about balancing
yep,
game
yep,
elements. If
yep.
you go on that blog and you search balancing game elements, there is probably the best thing I've written on game design is that, or the most useful thing is probably that article. And what it was spurred by was God, I forget what year that was now, 7 years ago or something. But I was playing, actually, I was playing Euphoria by Jamie
Yep, yep.
Stegmaier, Stonemaier Games.
Stone Meyer, yep.
And at the time, I think he's come out with a new updated deck of cards or
Yep.
whatever. But the cards in that deck um, struck me as not being very well balanced.
Well,
And
that
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 got me thinking about like, well, how do you balance stuff?
that's a Stone Meyer
And
thing. I'm balancing it afterwards.
I've heard that. I think he's getting better if it helps. But I know that I believe he re-released like like an updated deck for like Viticulture 2 or something. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not super familiar with that. But what I did, I kind of was thinking about like, okay, so how do you balance? Like if that's not well balanced, how would I have done it, or how do you balance? And like got me thinking of how do you do this? Because I've done it a million times, and I'm like, well, I kind of thought about it, and it occurred to me that I basically wrote down the process I use to like balance game elements, and then whether they're those cards in that game or buildings and ground floor or
Yep.
whatever. So,
How
uh,
you, how,
so I
how
kind of
you
like just outlined it.
balance
And it's like
resources to points practically. How
yeah, and it's helpful. I mean, everything's helpful in some limited capacity. It's helpful, especially when you've got a bunch of stuff, variety of buildings. I call everything a building. If you have cards or buildings or people or whatever, uh, things in your game that have different powers and different costs and things like that, um, you want them. I think I want them to be balanced, but it kind of depends. Like if you get them like you deal them off the deck, everyone gets some, then you want them to be fair, like similarly powerful. Like not you shouldn't get a huge advantage because you got dealt that card and I got dealt this card. If you get them like in an auction or something,
well,
then you kind of want them to
yeah,
be not balanced. You kind of don't want them to be the same. I mean, maybe you want them. I could see an argument for wanting them to be like similarly powerful, but like useful for different things, and that's all fine. But sometimes with an auction or a drafting game, you actually want them to be like some
yeah.
should be better than others,
Because
so
there
that
is
you
the
can
decision of the
support
player.
that mechanism.
Then you have the decision of the player, and it should count the decision of the player.
Right. So I actually wrote a follow-up post to that, which was a couple years later, where I was working on a game called Harvest, which I like a lot, by Trey Chambers, and I actually kind of talked about working on that game, balancing stuff in that game using that process from the first article. And I don't know if you saw that article too. It was like a follow-up
I
article. It was like a worked example or like a
I
this is
think I did.
that in
I
action.
think I did.
And in that one, it was balancing like it was talking about like worker placement spots. That's you place a worker in that game and you get some amount of value from placing your worker, and how much should the spots be worth? And we talked about that, and some of them were like there's some buildings you can get. So if you go to the spot that gets a building, how much value is this building to be worth to you? And you got to design the buildings to be worth about some amount. And if that's more than the other spots, then that spot has to cost something, or that kind of thing. Like it's how I came to the balance in that game, um, for the value of like worker placement spots, but also tied into that is like the value of the buildings you can get. and the value of the other stuff you can get. Um, so yeah, that's a nice. That's probably my best article is that one about how you balance game elements. And I've heard some people mention that they've read that and it like helped them or something. And one of those people, if I'm not mistaken, I think Elizabeth Hargrave mentioned that she read that article at one point and it helped her when she was designing Wingspan. So like, yay, I helped somehow. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I will not, I have not, and I probably will not sell as many copies of any game as Wingspan, but at least I can feel like I was
Yeah.
helpful in her
Yeah.
doing that
Uh,
in some small way.
what is your most played game?
Oh, geez, most played. Well, probably Eminence Domain, but if we don't count my
No, not
games,
your games. No, not your
um,
games.
I mean, Magic is gonna be up there too, but I'm not gonna count that either because that's like a different category. Probably like Glory to Rome, or maybe I can look at Board Game Geek and see. I used to keep track of all my games played.
Yeah,
Um,
approximately.
uh, Glory to Rome, I had a whole lot of
Oh,
plays of Race to the Galaxy, maybe not as many actually. Um, Puerto Rico, I have a lot of plays against Puerto Rico. Um,
and
and
what is your favorite game out of all of these? I suppose.
I think Railways the World or Railroad Tycoon, I think is probably my favorite game. But also up there, Puerto Rico is very one of my favorites. Um,
And
where
we will end soon with the questionnaire. Do you think you want to you add something? There is something I didn't ask you and you wanted to be asked?
Yeah, I guess one thing I thought you might ask, and I think you mentioned it a little bit before we started, I think, was what I'm doing now. Like, what's going to happen? What am I doing with my stuff? Now that TMG's
Yeah,
not around, because I kind of like. So I've been at this for like 12, 13 years, as far as since my
yeah.
games came out in
Yeah,
2009.
yeah. When you
And
said you are a civil engineer, I thought you kind of and I didn't want to go into a sad subject.
well, that's fine. I'll tell you, I am still trying to design games and stuff, and I'm actually pretty happy with some of the stuff that's happening. Um, Here, let me see. So I recorded on Board Game Geek to answer your question of what I played the most. Recorded on Board Game Geek, and I stopped doing this after a while. I've got about 200 plays of Eminent Domain. The only thing above that is Unpublished Prototype, which has 438 plays, but that encompasses a bunch of stuff. Race for the Galaxy, it looks like I played 150 times. Void of Rome, 130
So
times.
Race for the Galaxy is your most
Those are
played.
some of my
Yeah,
most played.
because it's
Those are some
fast
of my
to
most
play.
played.
Race for the Galaxy is fast to play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and I played a lot of it for a while. Glory to Rome is also
yeah,
one of my favorites. I
yeah, yeah.
think. If Glory to Rome, Puerto Rico, and
Railways of the
um,
World. So,
Railroad
you
Tycoon are
were saying
probably my
what
favorite.
about your plans?
Oh, so yeah, like I said, I've been at this for like 13 years, but I kind of circumvented what the process because instead of having to go pitch my game and convince someone to publish it, I just might hand it to my friend and he published it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
uh, so I had Terra Prime, Eminence Domain, and Crusaders, and
And
Eminence Domain
now,
Microcosm,
and
and
now,
Eminence Domain expansions. They all just came out. They just happened. I didn't have to like
yeah.
convince somebody. So now it's a little bit weird. So now that TMG's not really around, I still want my games to get published. I've got like, kind of a lot of games actually that never came out. Some were gonna come out like down the road from by TMG, and some maybe weren't necessarily. But I've got a number of games, and I've started to sort of pitch them to other publishers, and I found it to be a very weird experience because I've never done that before. Like I've done very little pitching to publishers. Um, I mean, so it feels like I had cheated or I
Well,
circumvented the system, and now I've got to go back and like do the thing, do the you know
yep.
that people that haven't been doing this for 12 years have to do. But I do kind of have an advantage though. Some people at least know who I am or have seen my games. I know a lot of people in the industry, so like theoretically I've got that advantage. But like I'm finding it not particularly easy
So,
to
s-
get anyone interested in my
s-
games,
s-
which is too bad.
so
I have, however, signed one game with a publisher that will theoretically come out. And so the good news and the exciting news is that um, Crusaders got picked up by
Yeah, it
Renegade
got picked
Games.
up by also the
So they're gonna
expansion. I think it was
and
because
yeah, and the expansion has been sitting in China printed for like 3 years now, and is finally going to come out. So that is really good news. And I don't know if I even could understand the reasons why they were sitting in China so long and after they got printed. Um, but the fact of the matter is, I've been waiting for that to come out for like 3 years now, and finally it is. And in fact, they're Renegade's going to have some at Gen Con next month.
I see.
And
And
yeah, so
but
that's finally
the
happening,
expansion, I
and
think
it's
it doesn't have the buildings. I think they're cardboard. No, they're all cardboard pieces now. They are not.
they are cardboard, yeah, and that's the design. That was a production decision that uh I'll say was not my control.
Yeah.
In order to make the expansion, I don't know, compatible with both the deluxe version and the retail version without making two versions of it, I think that was the impetus behind making them cardboard instead. Although the stated reason was because they'd fit better in the hexes, which is not true. But whatever. That it works. It's all right. It's not my favorite. But it's fine. It's. I would have expected to see um a deluxe version of the expansion. If I were a customer
Yeah.
and I had the
Yeah.
deluxe version of the
Probably.
game, I would have expected to see a deluxe version of the expansion with deluxe buildings, wood and also plastic. But that
Not
is
gonna
just not
happen
going to happen.
that
So
soon. Yeah.
fortunately, though, it's not so bad. It's because you can have it doesn't look any worse on the deluxe board than it does on the retail board to have the the the,
Cardboard.
the
Yeah.
cardboard tokens.
So
But anyway, so the other good news is Crusaders just went into beta on Board Game Arena, so people can play it. And the Board Game Arena adaptation includes not only the base game and not only the Divine Influence expansion, which is just about to come out, but also includes a 5 and 6 player expansion, which I made and is ready to print. It's got art, but never got
I
printed,
see.
and will theoretically be printed by Renegade in a year or something like
Yeah,
that. So that's
I'm
all
very.
play.
I didn't manage to get Crusaders the deluxe version, and I was sorry for that. But
Well, Renegade's making deluxe
yeah,
versions,
he's
so
making the
you can. It's
yeah.
not too late. It's not too late. Um, but yeah, I mean, even if you get the retail one, the retail is very nice also. So
Yeah.
like, you're not really out anything
I'm
if you
waiting
get
to
the
see
retail one.
what the Renegade will print. One
Sure.
thing, and the second one is I hope they'll print something for the expansion also, uh, in time. Okay, now I have to. We will finish this interview with my questionnaire, which is I don't know. Are you familiar with Actor Studio? Inside Actor Studio, have you ever seen that show?
Uh, I don't know if I've ever seen it. I'm familiar with it. It's like a series of
Yeah,
questions, like rapid fire.
yeah. There are a
Okay,
series of questions.
I'm familiar with that concept.
It's not rapid fire, but it is. And I'm going to start with what is your favorite word?
My favorite
Yeah.
word? Oh, geez, I don't know. Um, uh, I'm on the spot. I'm not going to come up with a word. I'm going to blank. Um, I'll try. Let's skip that one for now. If I think of one, I'll come back
Something
to it. I
which
feel like I
comes
do have a,
up
I must have
first.
a favorite.
Something with if it's your favorite word, then it usually comes up first in your head.
You think that, but yeah, not. I have nothing in particular.
Okay, that's an answer. What's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. I think I feel like I have more of an answer for this than for most favorite. Um, nah, I'm blanking on that too. I just don't care that much about words, I guess.
Um, okay.
Sorry, these are super boring answers. I should put a
Well,
flag in the ground and be like, I hate the word moist, except for I don't care about the word moist. Everyone else hates the word moist.
what turns you on creatively, or emotionally, or spiritually?
I think creatively, I think it's um the creative process and in particular um making something or figuring out something that's going to work. Almost like I talked about overcoming a
Yeah.
challenge before, like thinking of like a way that something's going to come together or work. And the thing about that is when you're designing a game, you get that moment, and you're like, oh, this is gonna work, and then you go play it, and maybe it doesn't work, and some people get discouraged at that point. But for me, it's like, oh, that didn't work, but I think it could. Oh, now it's like you get another
Yep. Yeah.
opportunity to
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
put it
Yeah.
together and make
And
it work. Like you get to reiterate,
what
redo
turns
it.
you off creatively?
Writing or editing rule books is really
Uh,
bad. Oh, and even worse than that though is um doing something again. Like if I did a bunch of work, like physical work, like maybe I laid out a bunch of cards or whatever, and I got tiles or whatever, and I made a prototype, and then I got to change my prototype. If it's just a little change, that's fine. But if I have to like redo all my tiles because I decided to make them significantly different, like that's a huge downer for me. Like to redo stuff that I've already done that I feel like I'm like I did that. I don't have to do that anymore. That is the worst. I hate that. And then editing rules is also the worst. Like I think it's like contractually obligated to be the
what
worst.
is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse
Yeah.
word? I mean, are you talking about like frequency of saying
Yeah.
it, or like thing that I get the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
visceral
Yeah. Yeah.
response from?
That what
Um,
makes you happy to say it?
if I'm cursing, it probably doesn't make me happy. um,
We can use it in happy situations.
that's true. I don't know, probably that word. It's very versatile. There's a movie called Boondock Saints where they have a whole scene about how versatile that word is.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
Sound or noise do I love? These are very different questions that I would have expected. What sound or noise do I love? It's very nice. The sound of like if you take like a very like cold beverage, like a soda or whatever, and you the opening of it, like the shh, that's kind of a nice sound. I like that
And
sound.
what sound or noise do you hate?
Um, I dislike um, well that like fingers on a chalkboard type sound, like that's
Yeah.
irritating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I hate that. Um,
Yep. That's a pretty good answer.
yeah.
A lot of.
Maybe a phone ringing. A phone. I've come to hate phone like my phone ringing. Like don't call people anymore. Like nobody calls people anymore, right? My 90% of the time my phone rings, it's suspected spam. It's I get 10 calls a day from spam calls, and so I just don't answer my phone anyway. And this is on my cell phone. That used to happen in my landline, and I would just never answer my landline because no one would call me except for spammers. And then you got your cell phone, you're like, oh great, cell phones are like immune to this problem. Only they're not immune anymore. I constantly get spam calls, and so yeah, my phone ringing kind of like every time that happens, I'm like, what? What do you want? It's almost certainly spam.
Which profession outside the one you already are doing would you like to attempt?
What profession would I like? Well, are we not counting game design because I
Yeah, yeah,
technically
yeah,
am
yeah,
doing that, even though I'm
yeah.
not doing it as a profession? And I presume we're not
Civil
counting
engineer, yeah,
engineering because
yeah,
I'm already doing
something
that.
else.
So what would I like? Oh, graphic. I think graphic design. I think I would like graphic design. When I was a kid, teenager, my sister and I used to make our own newsletters. Well, first we used to make news magazines. We'd like cut out stuff, and my cousin too. We would cut out papers. We put together like our own magazines. We do our own layout and piece together magazines. And then later, when we were in high school, we were in this like youth group, and we both my sister and I in our separate groups were we would I forget the name of the office. We would be the person that made the newsletter for the group, and so we'd be doing layout and stuff. And then my sister went on to I went to engineering school. She's a little younger than me, and so I'm like I didn't know what to do. I'm like oh I'll do engineering. I'm kind of good at it, whatever. And so I did that. And then my sister went to college and she started taking graphic design classes, and I kept thinking, man, that sounds cool. Like, why am I not doing that? That sounds awesome. And then she got a graphic design degree, and then she is no longer a graphic designer, whereas I got an engineering degree and I do engineering. So, whatever. That is something I think would be fun, and I would enjoy is doing graphic design and layout
What
and stuff.
profession outside you already are doing would you not like to attempt?
Oh gosh. I guess I could say any sort of text editing. No, that's probably not true. Um, I was thinking I hate editing rules so much I don't want to do it for anything. No, I probably physical labor like I don't know carpentry or something like that. Like something that I'm kind of lazy and something that requires a lot of like physical work. I probably should have done some of that. I probably would be better off if I did, but I probably like am happy to not. I don't know, do carpentry or those guys that build skyscrapers and they're walking across the beams like 30 floors up or whatever. That would I would not do well with that.
And my last question is, if this is a big if, you're in the south, no, in the south of south of America, southwest.
Southwest,
Yeah,
yeah,
so the west is not that religious. I've heard. Um, if
not as much.
if heaven exists, what would you expect God to tell you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, you're assuming I go to the pearly gates and not the other way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Told you should have ate better. I don't know. Like you would. I don't think about that kind of thing. Hopefully they would say um something like, we're glad you're here, as opposed to what do you think you're doing here, or anything critical. I guess if you believe in that kind of thing, though, it's
Yep.
then you have to believe it's not going to be
Yep.
critical. Like that's the whole point, right? They're not critical. Um, uh, but I think I'd like to think that it would be something to do with having brought joy to people via games. That's I'll pretend that's the thing that would happen.
Sir, I want to thank you a lot for coming on my show and talk a bit about your history. I hope you had fun.
Hmm.
I hope you felt comfortable here in my virtual gaming room in these virtual comfy chairs. Um,
They look very virtually comfortable.
they look, don't they? And I hope you had a good time. I hope it was a good experience for you.
I did. It was a very kind of interesting interview because it was much more personalized, less focused on I don't know the topics of the games or whatever, and more focused on like the personal stuff, which is interesting. Um, yeah. So thank you.
Uh, Thank you. I will do an outro. Please don't close your connection. I will do the outro and the interview, and we will finish afterwards. Um, so, thank you again, sir. Thank you to everyone who watched this interview live. Um, and thank you to anyone who will come and watch after the fact, which usually this is what happens. Um, and if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe because, well, keeps the internet alive. Uh, and also hit the notification bell. It will say to you when the next thing will happen, and so on and so forth. um, well, I think we said enough. I think this is one of the longer interviews I had, and it was a lot of fun listening somebody in the industry talk about his history. And what I like the most about these interviews is the cultural differences between different people on different sides of the pond, talking about their history in games. I hope you enjoy it too. And until next time, I can only say what it says here: play a lot, play loads, have fun. And until next time, bye bye, world, wherever you are. Okay.